Good morning, Facebook family and friends. This is Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson, and today is July 27th, 2024, becoming our whole authentic self. And we're going to add a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit today. We had a wonderful guest for the last 2 weeks. She was a mental health manager, Latoya Tundaloa Wilder Morgan from out of Texas. Want to really appreciate her and thank her for coming and being with us and sharing some of the information that she shared with us. So today we're going to go just over a couple of things that I think that we need to talk about. She talked about being emotionally mature, and she said when we are emotionally immature, it puts other people in danger. And I thought about that a lot this week. Had a couple of conversations with a couple of young people. And when we are emotionally immature, we sometimes overreact to situations. Or when we have trouble controlling our emotions. And this can also lead to physical altercations. And when you get into a physical altercation as a young couple, then your families are involved. So it really can put people in danger because they're trying to protect their loved ones, and they're also trying to make sure that no one gets hurt. But it can cause a lot of damage in a lot of ways. It can actually put you in danger physically and with the family. It causes problem and conflict between the families. And this is especially important when if you have children involved with those families. You don't want to have the children in the middle of conflict between two adults who are emotionally immature, who do not know how to manage their emotions. Another thing that came up last week. She said a couple of more things. She said a lot more things. I had given her a list of questions, and she answered some of those. She answered all of the questions actually. She talked about how important it was to know people, to get to know people. We've talked about this a lot. We have to be our whole authentic self. We have to bring who we are to relationships without bringing the whole of who we are. If we only show people the good, the things we like, and we're smiling at everything in a relationship, then when something goes against what we like, we can actually cause problems because now they're seeing us in a different light when we haven't brought the all of us in the relationship. I think I told you this before. I forget this young lady's name, but she sang this song, Gramercy Park. And she said, I tried to be all that you wanted me to be. I did the things that I thought you wanted me to do. But the person they actually fell for wasn't even her. And that happens a lot in relationships. We try to be the person we think somebody else wants us to be. We try to do the things we think the other person wants us to do. And then when we bring all of ourselves back together, when we bring out those fragmented parts of ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly, we find that we haven't really presented ourselves, and we haven't really shown anybody who we really are. So we need to really be whole in everything we do. We want to be authentic in everything we do. We want to bring it. This is who I am. And a lot of time relationships fail because people don't know us. They be with somebody. You heard somebody say, well, I thought I knew you, but they don't know us because we haven't shown them us. We haven't been real in who we are. We haven't been honest in who we are. And so it's really important that we get to know people. Another thing that she said was when we talked about how do you know when someone is really immature, just having a bad day, and it's consistency. We don't want to judge people by one action or one reaction. We are not the sum total of the worst thing that we have ever done. None of us are. So we don't want to treat people as if they are the sum total of that thing that they do that gets on our nerve. They're not. And being emotionally mature is definitely, it's a choice. We get to do it. We can do it. We cannot do it. It's up to us. It's up to us. A question came up last week that I really want to talk about, and it leads into what we're going to talk about today. We actually going to talk about being self-aware. And the question came up, the comment said, emotional maturity is not an overnight. It's a process, and reverting to the old familiar is part of that, isn't it? That's what the question came up, saying that emotional maturity is not an overnight. It's a process, and reverting to the old familiar is a part of that process that you wanted to know. And I didn't answer that well. One of the reasons I didn't answer that well, because our focus on these talks, when we come together, we want to be whole in every way. And as we talk about this, you'll see some of the reasons that I chose not to answer it in the sense that, yes, I didn't want to just come out and say yes. But becoming emotionally mature is a lifelong process. It requires consistent efforts, and it does require consistent commitment. As we become emotionally mature, There are sometimes things that are going to happen that's going to make us act outside of what we would really want to do, but we don't want to say reverting back is a part of it. It's not. We don't want to say it that way. Because like now, I'm an adult. I'm not a child. I get upset when somebody say that I'm a child or treat me as if I'm a child. But sometimes I may do something that's childish. So being emotionally mature, you may do something that was not done right, or you may do something that you wish you had not done that way. But you don't want anybody saying that you're still not mature and that you're still not emotionally mature. So I want to just be mindful and careful of how we speak, and that's why I didn't answer outright. But you're right. It is a process. It's a lifelong process. As we grow, as we continue to grow, you're going to meet something else that's going to make you, that's going to have you consider your emotion. That's going to have you look at how you're handling something. But it's not in the sense that that's our excuse for not being emotionally mature. That's what I think. That's what I want to say. Okay, for example, as a child, you have emotional reactions such as, they throw tantrum as a toddler. But expressing ourselves in words, that's what we do when we become adults. So we're different. And we're still adults. We're not kids anymore. We are adults. So we may do something that's childish, but we're adults. There was an emotionally intelligence guru named, his name is Daniel Goleman, Gole Goleman. And he said, being emotionally mature requires self-awareness. He said, if you're not able to manage your distress and emotions, and if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then it doesn't matter how smart you are, we're not going to get very far. So if we're not able to manage our distress and emotions, that's what we're doing. We're managing our emotions. We're knowing that what our emotions are. We're understanding what they mean, and we're managing them. If we can't do that, and if we can't have empathy, and when I saw this part about having empathy about other people, when I talk about myself as being emotionally mature, if I say that that's a process for me to be emotionally mature, then it's only fair if I give that same grace to somebody else. So we want other people to act a certain way. We want them to always be a certain way. We want them to do a certain thing. And all they got to do is really want to. They just don't want to. So we say that about other people. But when it comes to us, we want to be able to say that that's just a part of, I'm not where I used to be. I'm not where I ought to be. I'm not where I used to be. Well, I'm just growing. Nobody's perfect. We make excuses for ourselves. We on this talk, we don't make excuses for ourselves. Even when we're wrong, we acknowledge that we're wrong. We acknowledge that we haven't done what we should do. We acknowledge that a lot of time, instead of blaming ourselves, now we went back to trauma and we realized that it wasn't what's wrong with me, but what happened to me to cause me to react this way. What happened to me in my life that caused me to respond this way. We began to look at it. Another thing that was brought up this weekend that I want to share, and I think it may not be in this line, but I just want to put it right here anyway, and just take it as a side note, if you will. I went for a ride with a friend of mine, a younger lady, took me out of town, and I don't like driving. I don't like highways. Well, I don't like highways. I don't like any of it. I don't like bridges. I don't like drop-offs on the side of the road. I won't ride in that right lane. If there's a drop-off on the side, I'm going to get in the left lane. And a lot of things like that I don't like flying. I will do all of those things, but I don't enjoy them. So most of the time I take the train because I don't like flying. I will fly, but I don't like flying. And we were talking on our way out of town, and we were sharing it, and she knows about my past. She knows about some of the trauma that had happened in my life. And she was saying to me, that sometimes the trauma comes differently. We look at the trauma as something that happened to us, but when we actually look at the triggers may not actually be totally aligned with the trauma. It may be something outside. So what she was saying was, my fear of flying, my fear of bridges, my fear of heights, it could be related to that trauma of being abused as a kid, because now I feel like I need to be in control. I need to stay on flat ground because I feel safe for that. I need to be in control. Because I'm not thinking really that plane is going to fall out the sky. I really don't be thinking that. I really don't think that I'm going to go off the side of that road or over that bridge. I just get so, because I'm not in control. I was saying to her that I think that if they had a pullover station in the air, I'd feel a little bit better where the planes could pull over if something happened. But since they don't have it, I don't like flying at all, any of that stuff. But I think that I just wanted to say that as a side note, when we start to work on our trauma and look at our trauma triggers as we try and go back and see where did this stem from, sometimes it's not straightforward. Sometimes it's not outright. That's why it's so important for us to sometimes get that therapy or get counseling and talk to people to try and find out where is this coming from, because they know how to ask the questions and get us into the deeper part until we get to the root of it. So and thank you for listening to that. We're going to go back to self-awareness. So he said, being emotionally mature. If we can't have empathy and effective relationships, then it doesn't matter how smart we are. So self-awareness is the ability to focus on ourselves and how our actions, how our thoughts, and our emotions do or do not align with our internal standards. We all should have some standards about ourselves, some internal standards that we want to hold ourselves to. So there's a theory, the self-awareness theory is based on the idea that I'm not my thoughts, that I'm not my thoughts. You are not your thoughts. The thoughts belong to you, but they're not who you are. So you're going to think something that are not aligned with your standard, but those are your thinking. They're not you. You put yourself like in a different place. Like separate that. But the entity, instead of you being your thoughts, you're actually the entity observing your thoughts. So you're the thinker, but you're separate and apart from your thought. That came from Duvall and Wicklund in 1972. That came from them. So you're not, you want to make sure that we understand, like, we're not our emotions. Our emotions are not who we are. They belong to us, but they are not us. So if we start acting like our emotions are, that I'm my emotion, then we start to think about how we do things differently. We start to acting differently. We start to managing things differently. We can go about our day without giving our inner self any extra thought, merely thinking and feeling and acting any way we want. However, we can also focus our attention on that inner self, that ability, an ability that's called self-evaluation. So we can also focus our attention on our inner self, so we can self-evaluate ourselves. When we do engage in self-evaluation, we give some thought to whether we are thinking and feeling and acting as we quote-unquote should, if we are following our standards and values. We want to make sure that whatever our values are, whatever standards we have for ourselves, that we follow those. And when we do this, when we engage in this self-evaluation, it's referred to as comparing ourselves. It is referred to as comparing against our standard of correctness. That's what it's called. It's your standard of correctness. When we engage in self-evaluation, we give some thought, to whether we are thinking and acting like we should, and we follow are we following our standards? Are we following our value? And this is referred to as comparing against our standard of correctness. Excuse me. Self-evaluation requires us to have standards that we apply. These are standards that we apply to ourselves without a criteria that is in some sense represent the good self. So we have these criteria. I know what I want. I know my standards. These are my values. So when I follow these, then this represents the good self. Without these criteria, without this, you would know. How do you know if you're good? If you're being good to yourself, or if you're liking yourself, or disliking what you're becoming. If you're feeling superior, you're feeling inferior. So that's what it is. The standard of correction. Standard of correction is how we the criteria that we use to represent what I want to be. If we do this daily, we use these standards as a way of judge the rightness in our thoughts and our behavior. So we don't need anybody else to ever judge us. We look into ourselves, we judge ourselves. Is this what I want in my life? Is this the person that I am? We really have to look into that. Have I taken on some outside forces and I'm acting according to those outside forces? Or am I being the whole authentic Rosie? Am I being my whole authentic self? Using these standards of correction is a major component in practicing self-control. As we evaluate and determine whether we are making the right choices to achieve our goal, we use the standard of correction as a major component to practice self-control. I look and see, am I doing what I said I wanted to do? Is this aligned with what I want in my life? We do that, and it helps us to practice self-control. If it's not, then we sometimes look and say, well, no, this is not what I want in my life. And it helps us determine if we're making the right choice that would take us to where we're trying to go, to be in our whole authentic self. According to the self-awareness theory, there are two primary outcomes when we compare ourselves against our standard of corrections. Either we pass or we fail. And I like this too. If we pass, we find alignment between ourselves and our standards. I'm me. I'm my whole authentic self. These are my standards. Certain things I don't do, certain things I don't allow in my life. So I pass. Or I fail. Or I find discrepancies between myself and the standards. So we can sometimes when we fail, there's a discrepancy between what I say I want in life, what I say I'm about. We say that we are going to be exactly who and what we claim to be. I find a discrepancy in what I say and actually what I do and how I live. When we find discrepancies between the two, we find ourselves with two choices. We can work toward reducing that discrepancy, or we can avoid it entirely. Okay. And that's going to bring us back to that question that came up earlier. Avoid it, and when we avoid it entirely. So we'll get to it in a moment. The self-awareness theory, subsequent research suggests that there are a couple of different factors that influence how we choose to respond. It comes down to how we think it's going to turn out. Okay. If we believe that there's a little chance of actually changing that discrepancy, we tend to avoid it. So that's why we want to be mindful when we say, well, this is just a process. We want to be mindful when we say, well, everybody fall back into it. When we start to instead of looking just at ourselves, everybody do that. Everybody make mistakes. We start saying things like that about ourselves. Yeah, we all make mistakes, but that's not my goal. And my goal is not to make mistakes. My goal is to have my life the way I want it to be. My goal is to be whole and authentic. My goal is to be, to be the best person that I can be. So I don't want to say, well, everybody do it, because it gives me kind of a crutch not to do what I should do and not to really go look at myself. If we believe it's likely that we can improve or align with our standards of correctness, then that's when we take actions. When we start to believe, or we stop to saying those things and believe that, okay, I don't like what I see. That's another thing. We have to be honest with ourselves. I don't like what I see. I don't like how I handle that. I don't think I did that the best way. That doesn't align with what I want in my life. That's not who I am and where I'm going. So now we have to take a look and see if we that we take some action to align with our standards. And like I said again, one reason we don't focus on being a process or reverting to the old is part of that process. One reason we don't do that is to say that out loud, because on here we say that drowning is not an option, and it's not an option for us. We've been through so much in life. We've been through some traumatic things in our life. We're dealing with trauma triggers. We're fighting to be the whole and the best that we can be. So we know that we can revert back. We can go back there, but it's not a part of who we are, what we're doing. And so we don't focus on it. It's because our action will also depend on how much time and effort we believe that realigning ourselves is going to take. The slower the progress will be, the less likely we are to take on the alignment efforts. So if I got an excuse for not doing it, and then if I have an excuse for not realigning myself, the slower it's going to take me to go to get back in the line. The less likely we are to take it on, especially if the perceived discrepancy between me and the standard is big. So I know my standards. I know, where I'm falling short. If it's a big thing, then especially it's easier for me to just not do it. This means that when we're faced with a significant discrepancy, that it will take a lot of consistent and focused work. We simply just don't bother. We don't. When it takes a lot of work, and stick to avoiding self-evaluation in this particular discrepancy. So we don't evaluate ourselves. It's something that's bigger. We don't want to do it. We can have an excuse for not doing it, and then we just leave it alone and go on life with just like it is. We make excuses for it, and we just go on, and we never become that person that we should be, and having all that we should have, and living the way we should. Our level of self-awareness, it interacts with the likelihood of success in realigning ourselves and our standard to determine how we think about the outcome. When we are self-aware, and believe that there's a high chance of success, we are generally quick to attribute that success to a failure to our effort. So when we think that whenever there's a self-awareness that we believe that we can do this or we can do this, we take that we give ourselves credit for the success. Equally, when we're self-aware but believe there's a low chance of success, we tend to think that the outcome is more influenced by external factors than it is by our effort. Yeah, and I want to admit this too. Sometimes our success in a realigning with our standards is driven in part by some external factors. That can be true. But we always have a role to play in our own successes and our failures. We always have a role to play in our own successes and our failures. We don't want to allow outside factors to be the reason we don't get to be where we want to be. We don't ever want to do that. We also have some controls over our standards, such that we may alter our standards if we find that we don't measure up to them. Sometimes the things we want, sometimes we don't. We feel like we don't measure up to them. We'll lower them. We lower our standard. You heard that? We lower our standard. I just take people the way they are instead of having boundaries and setting some boundaries for ourselves to say this is not what I'm going to have in my life. We say things like that. I don't even know what it means to we just gonna deal with them where they at. Not if where they at is affecting me. I don't have to deal with them where they at. I can leave them where they're at, or I can set some boundaries where we can have a relationship that's with a mutual understanding and mutual respect for each other. So this is more likely to happen if we focus more on the standards than we do ourselves. If we fail when we are focused on the standards more than on our own, our performance, we're more likely to blame the standards and alter them to fit the performance. So for me, and when we decide what we want in life, the goal is to become my whole and to be my whole authentic self. I can't change that. I won't change that part. So, and that's a vague thing to say, that's big. I want to be my whole authentic self. And it sounds like I don't know. Although it may sound like we're shifting the blame to standards. Therefore, we're letting ourselves off the hook with things that really need to be changed, with the real discrepancies. There are many situations where our standards are overly strict. Now, I don't feel that it's overly strict for me to want to be whole and authentic. I want to be real. I want to be honest. But I still have to do it in a way that's in a loving and a kind way. When I speak to people, I have to be mindful of what I say. All of that is a part of me becoming my whole authentic self. This is who I am. This is who I want to be. This is what I want to show other people. So it may sound like I'm shifting the blame to standards and letting myself off the hook when I don't live up to them. We don't want to do that either. But the truth is, therapist offices are filled with people who hold themselves to these impossibly high standards, effectively giving themselves no chance of success when comparing themselves to their internal standards. So look at our standards and take our time. When I said that this is nonlinear, that doesn't mean that this is going to happen this way, then the next step is this way, next step. And one size does not fit all. When we have these things, if you find that your standards are just you can't reach them, they're just impossibly too high, you may have to think about that and talk to somebody. We have to give ourselves a chance at success, a chance at having the standards that we set for ourselves. We have to give ourselves a chance to accomplish those. It's clear from the research and on self-awareness that it's an important factor on how we think. It's an important factor on how we feel, how we react to our thoughts, how we react to our feelings, and it's also an important factor on what we do. So remember that therapist offices are filled with people who hold themselves to impossibly high standards. Now, if you got high standards and you feel that you can reach these standards, then do it. This is about you and about what you want to accomplish and about what you want in life. What you want. Now, I'm going to go back and see if I have any comments or anything that I need to speak to about. And I want to thank all of you. Good morning, Cora. Thank you so much. Minister Taylor, thank you so much for joining. And Pastor, thank you so much too. Thank you all so much. There are some benefits to being self-aware. We really want to pay attention to ourselves. We want to be mindful of what we do. We want to be mindful of what we say. We want to be mindful of the thoughts that we allow to stay in our mind. We don't want these thoughts, our thoughts and things, to be so much on negativity. Even for me, I know I'm on different prayer lines and things. So sometimes on the prayer line, and I say my own prayer, because sometimes on the prayer line, it's almost like everything is bad, but then God got a little piece in there. But I think everything is God, then the enemy just trying to come in with his little mess. So I want, in my life, God is so much bigger than anything. So just as a short testimony, for the last week, I have been suffering from these muscle spasms, really bad, all over my body, muscle spasms. And I know that I'm healed, even though I have pain. I know that I'm healed. I don't worry about am I healed. I'm not praying for healing, because I am already healed according to the word, and I live by the word. I believe what the word says. It doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter how things look. If God said it, that's what I walk out on. And if I walk out and fall, then I fall. I'm cool with that. But I know that I'm healed. So the healing is not the problem. I just got some pain. And if I'm like this too, I know that if there's some pain there, it doesn't feel good at all, because I want to tell you it was horrible. Where my toes would cramp up, my hands would cramp up. I get these pains where I could barely move, couldn't sleep. And it took yesterday, I was at the hospital. I had 3 hours of massages to massage my muscles. I went to the chiropractor, and they told me I needed to massage it. So I had 3 hours of massages, and I still was cramping up a little bit, and they hydrated. Today I feel much better. But I just want to say that when we, I just want to say that part, that we have to decide. It's all about us, how we want to think, how we want to feel, what we want to think on. I choose to think on the good. I choose to see the good and outside. I choose to see that. The bad things are all minute. The bad things are all so minor. It's not like the world is so messed up and then there's a little good. No, the world is wonderful and there's a little bad. And it may not seem that way when we look at the wars and we look at the carjacking, but everybody's not being carjacked. Everybody's not being killed. There are more people alive than there is being killed. We see the group of people where it's like people in a group and one person gets shot. We pray for them, we hope, and we comfort those people who are losing their loved one, and we try and do something about it if we can. But we don't lose sight of who's in control. I don't never lose sight of what you want to do in your life. The same way I don't lose sight of what God said. Don't lose sight of your goals. Don't lose sight of your plans. Don't lose sight by saying, where everybody falls back into this. This happens to everybody. It can happen to everybody in the world. I don't want cancer if everybody got it. I don't want cancer if everybody in my family got cancer. So I don't want to be immature because everybody immature. I don't want to be the least because everybody else is the least. No, I don't want to not do and have because everybody else does. I don't want to be uneducated because other people don't do it. That's up to them. Their life, what they choose to do. Here on this side, we're becoming whole and we're becoming authentic for ourselves. This is about us. There is some real benefits to being self-aware. And I've seen some things and heard some things. Sometimes people will say something to you and really hurt your feelings. And then you're thinking that because they are me, maybe, or you're thinking that because they're supposed to be mature in this area, that they shouldn't say those things. And then next time you talk to them, they act like they never even said it because we're not self-aware. And you think sometimes that they're ignoring you, they're acting like they never did that. They don't even realize they did it. When we learn these things, it helps us to be more empathetic toward other people. Because sometimes people say stuff, they don't even think about what they're saying. What the scripture say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Truly, if people knew what they were doing by doing things to you, they would not do it. And when I say don't know what they do, I don't mean that they don't have the strength knowledge of how to do it. What I mean is they don't know the consequences that follows what they do. If they knew the consequences that were going to come out of what they're doing, they would not do it. Since we don't know the consequences of all of our actions, we don't know because we don't manage the consequences. But what we do, we manage our actions. So we become self-aware to make sure that our awareness and who we are align with who we say we are. When we become self-aware, it can make us more proactive. It boosts our acceptance of other people. We get to that place where we're not upset with people when they say something. Most of the time, sometimes they don't see it. There's an example on here about that too. Sometimes we don't even, it all depends on how you choose to look at it. And it encourages us to be positive in our self-development. To encourage positive self-development. I want to be developed in a positive way. So I want to make sure that my thinking and my awareness of how I react changes. Self-awareness also allows us to see things from the perspective of other people. And it helps us to practice self-control. We want to be able, even though I may not agree with what you say, I want to be able to see it from your perspective. I want to give myself time to hear you, time to pay attention to what you're saying, time, first of all, to allow you to say what you need to say. Oftentimes, we don't give people, we don't want to hear what they're saying, but to sit back and be quiet and allow people to share their perspective. That's part of being self-aware as well. It gives us pride. It helps us to experience pride in ourselves as well as our general self-esteem. When we become whole and authentic, it gives us this, I'm going to say this sense of wholeness where we know that we are everything that we should be. I know who I am. I don't need kudos. I know who I am. I know what I want in life. I don't need kudos. I don't need a lot of people to tell me what I should have or what I should do. I know what I want. Now, they may be able to help me with how to obtain it, but I don't need a lot of people to tell me what I know what I want in life. I know my goal as to who I want to be. I know where my standards are. Some things that are deal breakers for me, I understand those things. And it takes a lot of going back, and it takes a lot of reflection, and it takes a lot of time. It takes going back and looking at it again. When we are self-aware, it helps us to make better decisions. Because if we're not self-aware, and it hasn't always been where I'm self-aware, and it's not in every action that I'm always self-aware. I still do some things, but I guess that's what she was talking about. I still do some things, but I get back up. I make that mistake, and I get back up. I don't stay there. If I can go back and change it, I do. If I can't change it, I go from there. I acknowledge that. We acknowledge things that happen in our lives. We don't hold things against us. I acknowledge what happened in my life, and I make the changes that's needed. It can make us better at accomplishing, like I said, the things we want. And it helps us to be better at communicating. It helps to, it enhances our self-confidence. So we get better at saying what we want. Sometimes we don't say it because we're not self-aware ourselves. We kind of got a glimpse of what we want, but we don't know how to communicate that to someone else. We don't know how to say, no, that's not how you're going to talk to me. Or, you may say that part, but you don't know how to tell them how you want to be spoken to. You don't know how to say how it's affected me. And that all of that is a part of when we are becoming self-aware. This is what I don't like. This is why I don't like it. This is why I want to have it in my life. And we need to we become better at communicating when we're aware of ourselves, when we're aware of our own needs. Even just these few benefits that I just named is enough to work on improving our own self-awareness. But that list, the little things I named, is by no means comprehensive. Not at all. Self-awareness has the potential to enhance virtually every experience that we have. And it's a tool and a practice that can be used anywhere, anytime, and to help us ground ourselves in the moment. You remember we talked about being in the moment. We always want to be in the moment, especially when we're making decisions. We don't want to go back because we start looking at things from the past and we start looking at the things surrounding us, and instead of looking at, okay, these are my goals. I want to be in the moment. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is what I need to do to get where I want to go. If we don't, we would just start to doing stuff. So they're important, and they enhance every experience that we have. Realistically, if we evaluating ourselves and the situation will help us make good choices. I'm looking at myself. I know what I want, so it'll help us to make those good choices. We don't go and try to make excuses and say things that will help us, move us out of our standards, move us out of our goals, move us away from what we're trying to accomplish. We're not hard on ourselves. We don't want to be hard on ourselves. That's why I'm so thankful to her for bringing it up last week. We don't want to be hard on ourselves. We want to give ourselves grace. But we want to be real with ourselves. We don't want to hold ourselves we're not the worst person in the world, even if we do revert back to those old comfortable places. We do that because those places in our lives were comfortable. But we do that sometimes, and we don't want to stay there. And we admit that, I did this, I did it. I mean, you can't undo anything you've done. Just like those traumatic events in our life, we cannot undo the trauma in our life. But what we can do is manage the trauma triggers. When they come up, we know that this is not that day. I can't go back and change that day, but I can decide on what I'm going to do today with this situation. So I'm not upset because they never take out the garbage. I'm going to look at today, the garbage needs to go out. Don't add them all together. They become too much to carry. The bigger the load, the harder it is going to be to carry. If we, like she said that too, Tanya Lord said that too. Let the issue be the issue. The one issue be the issue. Leave it. Don't add them all together. We're really good at sometimes not managing and not handling one thing, and then when it comes back, it's multiple things. Then we got our emotions to get involved. You remember our emotions. Our emotions do not, they belong to us, but they are not us. If I act the way I feel, no one in the world would probably like me. But I cannot act the way I feel. This is how I feel, and I have to manage that. I have to look at, why am I feeling this way? What is it that bothers me? And most of the time, as I said before, most of the time, if our reactions don't align with whatever is happening right now, more than likely there is something from our past that's affecting the way we're acting now. So if it does not align, more than likely it's something historical that's causing your hysteria today. We're going into hysteria about the garbage. More than likely it's not that garbage. You all upset because your spouse doesn't spend time with you. More than likely it's not because of that one day. It's more than likely added with some other time. I remember I asked them to go to the store with me back in 2019. I remember I asked them to do this and they didn't do it. So today, all of that stuff, because you didn't deal with it in 2019, now it is 2024, and all of that stuff has compiled itself. So today, only thing you said was, I need some bread, and they didn't want to go to the store, and now you all upset about it, and they thinking you're upset about a loaf of bread, but you're not really upset about the loaf of bread. You're actually upset about all the things in our lives that we didn't manage. But we want to make sure we do. We want to be help us to make good choices. When we talk about being emotionally mature, the first thing we have to do, well, what we really need rather, is to have a growth mindset. If we're okay with where we are, and if we're feeling like, well, everybody does this or this happened to everybody, if that's where your mindset is, getting any better is definitely going to be a challenge if you even try to do it, or you won't be able to stick to it. You need to have a growth mindset to become whole and authentic. Your mindset has to be a growth mindset. It's crucial to when you're setting and working toward goals, because it welcomes the necessary learning and the improvement that's going to be needed to progress. When you don't have a growth mindset, and somebody or something that you need to learn or to improve, sometimes you fight against those things. But when your mindset is one of a growth mindset, you don't mind hearing the criticism, constructive criticism. You don't mind when somebody come and say something to you. But when your mindset, your mindset really has to be one of growth. Focus on continuously self-improvement and growth rather than nitpicking your failures and shortcomings. We don't want to nitpick those little things, but our focus on to be better and to grow and to improve, to become our whole authentic self. We also talked about boundaries. We talked about setting boundaries. Boundaries are so important. When we remain firm in our boundaries, it's a sign of emotional maturity, because you're respecting your emotions by standing up for yourself. You're respecting what you desire in your life by having a boundary. We know that boundary. When you set your boundaries, you gotta state your boundaries. You got to let that person know how it affects you, whatever the reason you need a boundary. You need to talk that out, speak that out to them, and let them know what it is that's affecting you. And then you have to come up with a reasonable consequence. And a lot of time we don't set boundaries because we're concerned about how the other person's going to feel, or we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or sometimes we don't even know how to set boundaries. Well, I asked them, when you ask somebody something, you also got to realize that when you ask somebody, they have a right to say yes or no. We get upset about people not doing what we want them to do, and it's just to ask. You can ask somebody. They can say no. We can't get upset. We should not get upset, rather, because somebody tells us no. A boundary is not asking. It's not the same. You can ask and allow that person yes or no. And then if that's not good enough, if you're cool with them not doing it or cool with them not changing, their no, if you can live with the no, that's up to you. But if you decide that this is something that's really affecting me, this is something I know I don't want in my life, this is something that has to change, then you have to set a boundary. I'm used for an example. Every time I call you, you get on the phone with somebody else. Every time I call you, you overtalk me. What I'm calling you, I really need to talk to you. What I'm calling about is important to me. And when you overtalk me, when you talk to other people, it makes me feel that you're not paying attention. It makes me feel left out. It makes me feel whatever it makes you feel. And the next time you do that, when I call you, if you're not free to talk to me, then I'm going to hang up the phone. That's a boundary. That's a boundary. The consequence of hanging up the phone doesn't mean that you broke off the relationship. What it means that I'm reminding you that I need your attention when we're on the phone. I need your attention, Rose. I don't want you over talking me. So I need your attention. And if you don't have time to do it, we will talk another day. It's a reminder. We're not here to hurt other people. We're here to protect ourselves. That's what we do. We protect ourselves. So another thing, first of all, develop a growth mindset, and then set your healthy boundaries. And then understand your emotions. We talked about this a few weeks ago. To be emotionally mature, you need to understand your emotions. That's easier. I know it's easier said than done. We had the emotional wheel where it shows you this emotion may actually be related to this feeling. Sometimes the emotions and the feelings, your feelings, you're thinking that is one feeling when it's actually something different. So we really need to understand the feeling. Being vulnerable is scary, but recognizing your emotions will help you handle them more intelligently and more maturely. When you understand what makes you angry, when you understand what makes you sad or excited, then you can use that to your advantage instead of retaliating at the first hint of negativity. So when you know what makes you can use that. I understand what makes me angry. So now I don't have to retaliate when somebody says something. Ask yourself what makes you uncomfortable. Ask yourself what makes you uncomfortable and why does this make me uncomfortable? See if it's a trauma trigger. There is so much in what we need to do as we look at ourselves and become our whole authentic self. It's so much. And you don't want to just, you don't want to listen to this video and go back and change your whole world. You don't want to do that. That can be a mistake too. You want to look at the video and you want to take time out to study yourself, to pay attention to yourself, to pay attention when you get upset, to pay attention how you respond to other people, and own your mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. We make mistakes from time to time. The only person who do not make mistakes are the person who's not doing anything. As we do things, as we grow, as we move forward, we make mistakes. It's not that we make a mistake, but it's how you handle those mistakes and how we take responsibility that matters. That's what matters most when we're striving to be emotionally mature. How we handle those mistakes and how we take responsibility for them. I did that. Next time you make a mistake, apologize for your error without making excuses for yourself. That's huge. Oftentimes, when we do something, when we try and apologize, we want to make excuses about why this happened. That stuff does not matter to the person you're apologizing to. You need to apologize. See, the apology, if I hurt you and I come and apologize to you, I need to tell you, first of all, I need to be really sorry for what I've done and how it affected you. But I don't know how it affected you. So I need to be quiet and let you tell me. Because until we're both okay, it's not okay. Sometimes people feel like they just say, I'm sorry, and that's the end of it. Until we're both okay, it's not okay. So next time you make a mistake, apologize without making an excuse. Just apologize, say you're sorry, and let them speak. Let them tell you how it affected them. Because if you don't know how it affected them and you really care, you can make the same mistake again. But allowing them to tell you how they feel about it, if you really want to be in that relationship, knowing how that bothered them, knowing how that hurt them, knowing what it did to them will help you to be more aware of making that same mistake again. And I was talking to somebody over the weekend. They said, and I told them about I had to apologize. I think I said it last week that I had to apologize to my kids for something that I did that traumatized them, and I didn't mean to traumatize them. I was actually trying to surprise them. And David, my older son, said, "Ma, they were so traumatized," and I had to apologize to my kids. He's like, "Oh no, we don't apologize to kids." Yes, we do. If that's what we did wrong, if we made a mistake and we didn't do it right, we apologize to kids too. I had to go back and apologize because that was not my intention, and I had to let him tell me. So when he said, "Ma, you traumatized Lena and Mike," and when I went back and apologized, I had to. They told me, "Yeah, Mom, it really hurt. We were crying and we were so scared and we were so upset." I did not even know that. See, if we don't allow that person that we apologizing to speak, we never know actually how much it hurt or how it affected them, and then we make the mistake of doing the same thing over again if we don't pay attention. Then another thing we want to do, we can find a role model. So if even if our parents have not been, good role models for us as being emotionally mature, dad screamed at mom, mom screamed at dad, if that stuff, watch for other people. They don't even have to be, they can be your mentor, either colleague, somebody at work, somebody at church, a friend. Watch how they handle challenging situations and how they respect their emotions. Why? Pay attention to other people to see how oh wow, you see something happen and how they responded to it. Pay attention to it. It can give you insight into better habits to form and inspire us to keep it and develop in our maturity. So I'm going to give you this example. That was a young lady, and it's just an example. I called her Dora, and she was having relationship problems with her boyfriend. She started to feel like he takes her for granted. He doesn't tell her that he loves her. He doesn't share any affection. He doesn't show any affection. So they argue and fight about this all the time. He's not paying her any attention. Then she realizes that she may be contributing to the problem. We never get to that point a lot of times where we realize that it could be us too. When something happened with somebody else, they're not doing what they want. It's easier for us to look through the window than to look in the mirror. So she realizes that she could be contributing. And as she starts to look inwardly, she sees that she doesn't always show him appreciation. She overlooked the little thing that he do around the house for her. She overlooked the small show of affection that he gives her. So as she considers her thought process, she processes that she missed the opportunity when he missed the opportunity to make her feel wanted. When he missed the opportunity, she considered the processes that when he missed that opportunity to say or do something that would make her feel wanted and make her feel loved. She assumes, that's what happens, she assumes that he's purposely doing these things on purpose. He's purposely doing these things. He's purposely avoiding doing these things that she likes. That he doesn't want to spend time with me. It's not he doesn't want to spend time with me. It's not always that. So she spends some time to think about it. Talk to him. Communicate about how they want to show and receive love. Have you ever, in your relationship, told your spouse, your girlfriend, your best friend, how you expect to show and receive love? Or did we just let it go anyway and go in there and get mad when it doesn't go the way we want? So then once you began to talk about these things, how you show love. This is how I show love. Just because I gave you an example for my ex-husband, I called myself when he was out of work. I didn't want him to feel that he was out of work. I knew he was out of work, but I wanted him to feel like what I had was what we had. And so one day he said to me, he said, "You think you're my mama?" And I wanted to know how. And he said, "I can say I want something and you go buy." I thought I was doing something nice. But, it made him feel like, he felt like he was the man. I don't need you to go buy everything the time I say I want something. And those little things really are important. They really are important that we have those conversations to say, this is how I show love. So they say, well, I don't want that. And we have to respect that person if they said that's not what they want. And then there's another one. There's a young lady, I called her Bridget. Because my girlfriend at church, Bridget, I love her. I said, Bridget suffers with low self-esteem. It causes her to have depressive symptoms. So she doesn't feel like she's good enough, and she doesn't accept opportunity that come her way because she begins to feel like she's not going to be able to do it. Okay. So she goes and gets therapy. And so the next time an opportunity comes her way, she thinks that she doesn't want to try it because she decides that, they may turn her down. What happens if they're going to turn her down? But then as she starts to look inwardly and start thinking about her self-awareness technique, she realizes that she's only telling herself that she doesn't want it because of her fear of not getting it or her fear of not being good enough to keep it. So she reminds herself that she's good enough. And she redirects her thoughts to what if I succeed instead of saying, what if I fail? What if I don't get it? Instead of thinking that way, what if this happens bad? What if this happens good? And we accept the opportunity and she continues to use these tools. So things like that, things that will help us to think differently, to change our way of thinking, to focus our thinking in a different way. And it's going to help us to be self-aware. And it's going to also help us to get to that level of maturity that we're seeking. So in answer to that question from the very beginning, yes, it can be a process. And yes, reverting back to the old can happen. But we don't want it to become a crutch in our life. We don't want that to be our conversation. Yeah, people do it, but that's not what I'm going to do. And even if I fail and one day I do revert, I'm going to pull myself back in alignment with where I want to go and doing the things that I want to do. Okay. And let me see if we have any comments. I don't want to miss anybody. Okay. We have no comments. Want to thank you again for joining. Thank you so very much. I will be posting this, as you know, on YouTube right after this. And I really appreciate all of you who watched today with us, and those who will be watching this video later and who will go on YouTube and watch it. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much. I don't actually know where we're going next week. I kind of sort of and don't have a topic, so let me just wait. And we'll talk next week at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. And we end with our affirmations for today. We honor ourselves by being authentic. We are exactly and actually what and who we claim to be. We're mature in every area of our lives, and we're working every day to become self-aware and to apply that awareness to our lives. And we are safe places for ourselves. Thanks again for joining. I really, really appreciate you. You all have a great day, and I'll see you Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Have a good one. Bye.